Hey guys, this is Crystal Cook, and we have another installment today of Female Fridays. I'm very excited, and I have Cheryl Weedmark with me. Cheryl is the Director of Marketing and Customer Experience for Into Communications. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Crystal. I'm excited about our conversation, and I know we're both passionate about these topics. So thank you for thinking of me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to just give you the floor for a few minutes, just to kind of talk about your role currently and some of the things that you are seeing in the industry with 2020. A lot of things have changed.
For sure. A lot of things have changed. 2020, obviously, we're in the midst of a global pandemic right now. So it creates a lot of challenges, but also from what I've seen, a lot of opportunities. So as you mentioned, I'm the Director of Marketing and Customer Experience at Into Communications, and we're a digital marketing agency based in London, Ontario, Canada. But interestingly enough, most of our clients, I would say, are actually American. So it's interesting working with you guys south of the border and creating content. So what do we do? I have a team of content creators. We're doing everything from social media content to email marketing to web development to paid advertising. Anything that you can think of within that digital marketing space, we create and we manage for our clients. So that's essentially what I do. I do have a bit of an interesting background. I went to school for journalism and worked in television for a number of years, and then worked at a financial institution as well for about 10 years. So kind of come to the table with an interesting background that's allowed me, I think, to provide some added value to our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cheryl and I have had, a couple of conversations prior to this recording. And so one of the things that we started talking about right away is the evolution of relationships, because I see it from an account management kind of standpoint, and then you see it from the digital marketing and relationship and I guess just, direct contact standpoint. And one of the things that I found so interesting over the last few years in this industry, when I first started, I've only been here about 4 years, everything was very much who you know, who you go have a beer with, who you play golf with, and that's how you did your business. And then very quickly, we have really changed, and it's more leaning towards like the digital marketing side and what you're putting online. Who is reviewing you? Who is talking about you? Who is singing your praises? Who is recommending you? And it's kind of forcing the industry to take a step back and change how we're doing business. And so kind of give me some insight on that, because I feel like there's a disconnect in our industry. I think some people are maybe a little more old school where they think, oh, I need to just do business with my friends. And then other people think there's a lot of benefits and there's a bigger reach with digital marketing, but it's not as personal. And I know that you can make digital marketing very personal and keep those relationships and grow those relationships. But I think a lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah, and I think personalization is as a whole conversation, which I know we're going to touch on. And it's interesting that you brought this up. And I think, the global pandemic certainly has forced us into that digital communication place faster than we probably would have gotten there if that didn't happen. However, that being said, that's always sort of been the trend. So, even once the pandemic hit, but even moving, aside from the pandemic, B2B companies, essentially, I'll say B2B, I would say B2C a little bit, are forecasting that these digital interactions that we're talking about are 2 to 3 times more important now than your traditional sales interactions, which are the things that you're talking about. So, taking your clients out for golf or going out for a beer. So companies are recognizing that these digital, we'll call them touch points, are more important than what we used to call, which is like the feet on the street or the outbound sales rep. And so the reason for this, of course, is the fact that you can't get in front of people the same way. But, is the relationship itself still the important thing? Because, you hear in sales, and I know, Crystal, we talked about this too, it's all about the relationship in sales. And that is true. But I would say how you build and maintain that relationship is what's evolving.
Absolutely.
My experience, yeah, like a strong digital marketing program can absolutely immediately give your brand, your company, a much bigger voice in the market. It can create awareness. It will boost consideration rates. It makes you relevant in your space. And I think that if you have a well-executed digital communication marketing strategy, it will touch more potential buyers than any human ever could before. And that's before, during, and after the pandemic is over.
Absolutely. So, in my own personal development journey, I really thought that I had to say and do everything very perfectly a few years ago. If I was going to be in front of a large sales group, I had to say everything perfectly, do everything perfectly. If I was going to make a video or any kind of content, it had to be just professional, just related to this, and it has to be worded a certain way. But I really found that if you just turn on your camera or write something and just be yourself and show your personality and who you are and how, what you're interested in and what you're trying to accomplish, it's so much more relatable, and you can put it across all these different platforms, and you're building relationships. They're actually getting to know you, and it doesn't have to be perfect. So that's some of the things I try to tell salespeople now. It's like, relax a little bit. Like, talk about the things that you enjoy. You can do that over social media. It doesn't just have to be who you are in person. And I think that's kind of the disconnect that the sales world has had for a little bit. I have to be perfect on social media, but I can be myself in person. It's like, no, you can be yourself, period. You can relax.
The biggest advice I give people when they say, well, how do I create this content? Like, what do I say? I'm like, just be human.
Yeah.
And, talk like you would to your friend. When your friend asks you about what you do for a living, how do you explain that to them? You're not using industry jargon. And sometimes I'll even read something and try to explain it to my 10-year-old, because often if he can understand, and I know most of the other people looking at that, watching that, or reading that will probably understand, let's hope. So yeah, be human. That's really important. Another thing that I find interesting, I don't know if you find this, Crystal, and I'd be interested in your perspective, but since we moved into this virtual remote working situation, I feel more connected with my clients than ever before. And I think that's because when we were in the office, we would have phone conversations. So, you're traditional, you're on speaker, everybody's sitting around a table, you're all talking. But never did I really see my client face to face. We didn't do the video Zoom conversations very often. And I didn't see into their homes. I didn't meet their kids. I didn't meet their pets, their significant others. And now I just feel like I have this, incredible relationship with the client themselves, because I know so much about them personally. And again, they become human to me.
No, I agree. I'm 100% the same way. And I did not start making video content until we were all quarantined and I was at home. And I was like, I have nothing else to do. I'm so bored. And, I put out a couple funny videos. Like one video, I was promoting a webinar that I was doing, and I fully dressed up in leopard print from Tiger King and had a pet tiger.
Oh
and
my God.
Watch this video coming up. I know we're all watching Tiger King right now, and just had fun with it. I had just crazy responses just from doing very personal, fun, at-home stuff like that. So yeah, we've absolutely changed our mindset in a positive way when it comes to interacting with our clients. It's not just either in person or just a phone call. We're actually understanding them and seeing what they're doing and who they are.
I think so. And I say, off the top, I said, this year it was very challenging for so many people, and that we certainly all recognize that. But I think there are some things that happened that were, for the best, and I think created some opportunity. And I don't really want to go back to just picking up the phone and calling them. Like, I want to keep this Zoom, sort of virtual interaction. I want to keep that, even if we do end up going back into the office at some point permanently. I just think it just provides value and creates trust.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And just seeing someone's face and how they react to whatever you're saying is very beneficial in any conversation, right? Because over the phone, you're missing some of those social or those nonverbal cues a lot of times, but you're able to really pick up on those and better connect with someone face to face. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to jump. I know that you have a list of things that you want to talk about as well. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. We were talking about how we can, I guess, explain to people in our industry how to get started with digital marketing or how to make it more personal. And you have your 5-star, I guess, contact for that. That plays into that pretty well. So I'm going to let you go ahead and start talking about that.
Yeah, I'll get to the 5-star in a second. I think it's interesting. our CEO, Rick Lambert, and I have conversations around trends. Like we're always, watching what's happening in the industry. What is the next big thing that organizations need to be aware of when it comes to digital marketing? And I would say as we head into 2021, we already know there's so much content. I know, I mentioned to you, I have twice as many emails as I did before the pandemic, because now businesses are forced to communicate in these ways. So you're getting text messages offering deals, you're getting emails offering deals. So there's an overload of communication. So I would say the trend heading into 2021 is how can you customize, how can you personalize that content? So what I have learned is that people will actually respond and be very open to communications that are personalized, but they have very little tolerance, and I'm included in this category, for poorly timed or irrelevant messaging. And then what happens is you very quickly go down, unsubscribe, don't want to hear from these people anymore. So focusing on the personalization aspect from a user experience perspective is what is ultimately, I think, going to keep customers happy. And we want to deliver that very positive experience all the way through. So what is personalization? People say, well, what is that? What does that mean? How do I do that? So I summarize it by saying it's getting the right message to the right person at the right time. Yeah. And I mentioned customization because that's essentially kind of the same thing. So sales leaders on average rate their digital channels basically twice as important now as they were before the pandemic. So they're relying on this content that they're distributing through social as being relevant. So is your content hitting the right person at the right time? And is it the right message? So how do I customize? Like, what are some areas that I can customize? So email, email is an easy one. So can you segment your email distribution list into various verticals? And then can you take those verticals and can you actually create the most relevant information for that smaller audience? Rather than blasting out to 6,000 people the same message, can you alter that message and speak to them directly? Can you follow up with a drip campaign for those that have actually clicked through to your email? Can you follow up and say, hey, I saw that you were looking at this, but you didn't take that next step. Can I provide you with this information that might help answer any questions you have? So that's email. Retargeting ads is something we're going to see a lot more of as well, I think, in 2021 for those that aren't actually on board with that. So this is where you would actually target customers or prospects that have visited your website already with an ad on their social media. I'm sure you see it all the time. I looked at a Gap sweater last week, and now that's all I'm seeing on Facebook is this Gap sweater, and it's in my face, and I still want to buy it, but I haven't yet. So how can you retarget with a display ad or something in social, reminding them, hey, you just looked at this. You didn't really take that next step that I wanted you to take, but we're still following you and we're still here for you. So it's just, top of mind, point of need kind of thing all together. And then with regards to social media, we have, and I know we'll put this up on the screen for everybody to see, but we have something that we created called the 5-star formula. So this is really a system for creating content for your business. Businesses do not need to talk about their product and service all the time. In fact, my recommendation would be that 20% of the time you post something that's product service related. So if we look at the 5-star, you've got 20% around your product service. So this would be specifically addressing maybe challenges that you offer solutions to. Think of it from the customer's perspective. And instead of, do I want unified communications? Let's talk about the greatest thing about unified communications. It's, hey, did you know that this product we sell, this service can solve this problem that you have? Because that is what ultimately the customer cares about. So that's the product service piece. 20% should be around your employees. And who are these people that are doing all this fantastic work and servicing your customers behind the scenes? Who are they? We want to see them and we want to hear about them. 20% should be around your customers. What is your customer experience? What has it been like for them to collaborate and work with you? Because as you know, ratings and reviews are also so important now in the digital landscape. 20% around industry posts and updates. So if you're in the tech space, learning about what's happening in that industry, but then even taking it that next step further and giving your own opinion or your own value proposition on what's being said. And then 20% around the community. So what are you doing within the community that you work and live, and how are you supporting the organizations within that community? And not even just supporting, but collaborating with. So could be sponsorships, could be non-for-profit organizations as an example. So that's what we call our 5-star crystal. That was a lot of content right off the top.
Well, it's a lot of good content. Now, I want to talk about the reviews for a second, because I think that's something that maybe our industry, the printer and copier industry, could be a lot more transparent with. So I was putting together a reasons to use PaperCut or sell PaperCut kind of ad about a year ago. And I did some research on my own, and I was surprised to find out that statistically, over 60% of people do extensive research online before buying any product, period. Software, a new bike, whatever, right? And I have to imagine that number has drastically grown in this last year, right? So if you don't have your problems and solutions in your customer reviews online, when these individuals are doing their research, they're just missing you completely.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not even competing with your competitors if you're not putting that content out there for people to find right now. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. Mm-hmm. You're not even competitive if you're not doing some of this stuff.
No, for sure. And a lot of people are afraid to ask for those reviews from their clients. And so that's always a difficult thing, I think, for a lot of businesses. So, I mean, for some of our clients, we actually create what we call review campaigns, where we will create something that goes in somebody's signature that says, hey, we'd really like to know how we did today. Write us a review and get entered in a draw to win a $100 gift certificate that we're going to do every single month. Like, sometimes you don't want to incentivize something that's authentic, but at the same time, in order to get your customer or client to take that next step, which is, I had a fantastic experience today, I want to tell everybody about it. And by the way, I might get a chance to win a $100 Starbucks gift card. I mean, that's a great thing. Retail's been doing that for a long time. When you go and you get your printed out receipt, which a lot of businesses still do, and it says, hey, by the way, you just got selected to fill out our survey for a chance to win a gift card. So same kind of thing, because the reality is the buyer today is very educated. And chances are, before they even search for your product or service, they've already done their research. They're already at that point of buying, which has an advantage, because you know that by the time they hit you up, whether it's on your site or wherever it might be, they already know they need that. So you don't need to convince them of that. It's that you need to convince them that you're the best provider of that service and product. And reviews right now is certainly the best thing you can do.
And even if you get some negative reviews, people don't expect you to be perfect all the time. They're looking for how you respond and handle and fix it. So if I'm looking up a product and I see a handful of negative reviews for different reasons, if I can publicly see that person or that company responded to them to try to fix it and make it better, then I'm like, okay, if I have an issue, if that does happen to come up, they care and they're to make it better, right? Mm-hmm. So also, like, sometimes if you do get a negative review, post it anyways. It's an opportunity for your company to learn from and maybe improve, but it's also an example of how you will address problems and how you're there for your customer. So you can make it, a positive thing.
I couldn't agree more. I actually would even say that responding to a negative review, because oftentimes you can't control those if it's on, your Google My Business or wherever it might be, even Facebook for that matter. People can just go and post things. They don't necessarily need permission to do that, but it's how you respond to that negativity or not so favorable comment, we'll say. It's how you respond to that is going to matter the most. And in fact, Google, when they give you your rating reviews on Google My Business as a company, they don't necessarily review you lower because you have a negative review or maybe a 1-star. They will actually review you higher just for responding to that complaint or constructive criticism, we'll call it. So it's not everybody's going to have a positive experience. There's always going to be those people that think that they deserved or should have had a better experience or journey. But it's how you react to it. And it's very interesting because before this review world was around, or before this, the digital customer communication was around, businesses could get away with complaints. They could get away with people calling and saying, this is ridiculous, this happened, I'm not happy. Nobody knew about it. So, it was always tell a friend. Like, it was word of mouth that got people business, because that's the only way you could hear about these, situations that happen. But now you have a negative experience somewhere, you go to social media,
everywhere.
And that's the first thing that they're going to, right? And they can't avoid it. They can't hide behind it anymore. There's no more wizard behind the curtain. Everything's very transparent. And the businesses that have always had good customer experience are the ones that are still here today and are thriving.
Yeah. So I was in the restaurant industry before this, and I was a GM, and I would spend whole days just sitting down at different tables with different people, just asking about their experiences, because I would find that if people were ever unhappy, they would just leave and never come back and say negative things, and you didn't have a chance to address it and fix it. And I had seen a couple of frustrated customers throughout the years become my most loyal customers that would have like their family Christmas parties in my store, because I sat down at their table one day, asked them how things were going, fixed their problem, and like, you have a loyal customer for life, right? So when I look at some negative reviews, and when people reach out to them, I'm like, you might have actually taken that negative review and made a customer for life from it, because it's that easy to turn around if they feel like you actually care.
It's true. It's absolutely true. It's just, ultimately what the customer really wants at the end of the day is to be heard. And they want it to matter, what they say and what they think. And that's why we're seeing these positions come up in organizations where you are responsible for customer experience. And that is your only job. We just did a job posting for a company in Idaho, one of our clients, and the job posting title was literally First Impressions Manager. Their entire job was managing first impressions when onboarding a new customer or client. That was the role. So we're going to see, I think, a lot more of that. I also think organizations really need to have a story that goes along with their business. So who are you? What's your story? People struggle with that. Organizations, companies, CEOs, leaders, executives, they struggle with telling the story of the organization, or at least being able to, organize it properly. They understand the organization and how it started, but it's like, what's the actual story? And so we're seeing a lot of businesses that are hiring storytellers. They're hiring chief storytellers, and their role and their only role is to make sure that the company story is consistent and that it's told and that it is, relevant and also apparent to customers what the story is. So storytelling and customer experience, again, two kind of buzzwords for 2021.
Absolutely.
The other thing I was going to mention too, Crystal, I know we could talk for 3 hours literally, but a lot of our customers are starting to understand the value in having their employees share and create content on their platforms about the work that they do at the company. And business leaders, sales leaders are struggling with, how do I get our employees to actually do something with this content? And then from there, what do they do with this content aside from sharing it? Because we know the reach is so much bigger organically when you can have your staff sharing the content that you're creating on your platforms for social media. So I just had 3 tips on that because it's something that, is sort of fresh in my head on a conversation that I had last week with a client. So for employees, when you're sharing company content, try to, if possible, to highlight your own personal relationship with the content. So if it's an article, why is this important to you? If it's a picture, what does this picture mean to you? If it's a video or an infographic, whatever it is, just include some text in your repost, which will actually connect you a little bit more authentically to the content directly. I also suggest in my second tip is, can you tag somebody in your reshare? Is there a client? Is there a coworker? Is there an employee, somebody that you can actually start a conversation with by asking a question, tagging them, and then sharing that content? If it's an industry post, maybe you might want to tag a coworker and ask for their opinion on the article, or say, like, have you seen this trend? And then the third point for me, or third tip on sharing content, would be around sharing it within a limited audience. And this sounds a little bit counterintuitive because the idea is that you want to get it out to everybody, but you also want engagement. And you'll see better results with content if it's shared sort of privately or to a small group where it's more relevant. And again, it comes back to what we talked about earlier, which is customizing, personalizing your content to people that you know will benefit the most.
Targeting your verticals correctly, like your email campaigns.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm making some of my own notes over here, y'all, because Cheryl is smart. So make your own notes as we're going along for sure. No, that's amazing. I really worked on kind of how I was delivering content in these last few months as well. And I have my own book of business actually broken down into 3 different categories based off of performance and engagement. And I send out 3 different types of emails based off of the different verticals. So these are things that you can apply to just managing your own book of business. Maybe you're not the marketing team. Maybe this isn't what you do every day, but you can apply the same concepts to your own customer base or your own accounts that you're managing by figuring out what's the most effective message for each group and then approaching them that way.
Exactly. Yeah. It seems overwhelming, I think, at the beginning when people think, oh my goodness, I have to write this email 3 times and say something a little bit different every time. But when you actually start seeing the results from it and you actually see people responding to it and saying, hey, thanks for pointing this out, or thanks for sharing this because it actually helped me with this, then you'll start to see, okay, this is actually what people want. Yeah. So again, it's, the right message at the right time to the right person. That's what it comes down to.
I, at one point, had struggled between sending out mass emails and then sending out very personal emails to just that one person. And the way to kind of meet in the middle is to break down your accounts in different categories and write out a personalized email to that category. So I'm writing 3 emails now, and I'm not trying to personally write an email to every single person in the account to make it feel genuine and, tailored for them. So it really will save you a lot of work if you do it correctly.
I think so. Yeah. And I think more isn't always better. Sometimes less is more. So, we've worked a lot with clients on trying to really clean up their distribution lists with their emails. So for example, if you've, got a handful of people that never open your email and they haven't for a year, maybe they didn't unsubscribe or it didn't bounce, but they're just not interested in the content. Is there a way to send a communication to them to say, hey, we've noticed that you haven't engaged with our content. Is there something you want to know about that we're not telling you? And if so, we'd like to hear that, because then you've actually engaged them, even though you're saying, hey, you're actually not engaging with us. What are we doing wrong? You're essentially asking them, what do you want to hear and see? And then you can actually start providing more relevant communications to that person. So even something like that, or we haven't heard from you in a while, a campaign around, what do you want to hear about? What do you want to know about? Is there anything that we can help you with? What are your biggest challenges? So these kinds of things, just thinking about what you would appreciate, putting yourself in your customer's shoes.
So you and I talked a little bit about the Women in Communication mentor group that you're a part of. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to get too far into that because that's a whole other video we're going to make later. That's going to be part 2. But can we talk about that a little bit? Because you are a personal mentor and you concentrate on how to create and personalize your own brand and story.
Yeah, and it's interesting because first of all, I wanted to say I love what you're doing with involving females, because as you said, I mean we've talked about the fact that oftentimes there's not that many females that are sitting in these boardrooms having these conversations. I mean that certainly has pivoted a lot in the last 5 years or so, but the group Women in Communications and Technology it's a networking group here in Canada, and it's an opportunity for like-minded individuals like you and I to have conversations about things and help support other women with maybe subject matter expertise that you can provide. So one of the things that I get asked to speak on a lot is personal branding. So, when you talk about company branding, you're talking about brand guidelines, you're talking about things like font and color and messaging and stories and all these kinds of things that play into the actual design elements of what a brand is. But when you talk about personal branding, people often get a little confused and they say, well, what does that mean? Like, why would I need to personally brand anything? I'm like, well,
or people don't like that term. I have a cousin and she's like, you millennials and your personal brands and stories. And I'm like, that's how I make my living. What are you talking about?
But that's essentially what you have to do.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, you work for a company, but you are your own person. You are your own brand. You have your own values. You have your own interests. You have all of these things that make up who you are. And rather than just flipping out anything in terms of content, how can you really sit down and put together what it is that you are? What is your brand? What is the story that you want? Like, somebody hasn't met you. They don't know you. They know nothing about you. What would you want them to know? And then sometimes part of that is, what do you not want them to know? Yeah. So that is a component, right? There are things that you don't want to share with the world. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's really just the digital way of golfing with someone, right? Because when you make face-to-face relationships and you're doing things with them and you're shaking their hands, you're meeting their families, you're getting to know them and their story and who they are and their brand. Mm-hmm. This is just a way to digitize those relationships and who you are and put it out there for anybody to pick up, not just a handful of people that you happen to see this week.
For sure. Just like us, I consider this as we just had a digital coffee. We were just, this is something that I would do. I would call you up, Crystal, and I would say, hey, let's just grab a coffee and talk about what's happening in your world and share ideas and share insights. We just had a digital coffee.
I love it. So guys, part 2, we're going to talk about building and creating your own personal brand and story. So we'll definitely have Cheryl back. Cheryl, you and I both made a bunch of notes while we were having some conversations prior. So I want to ask you, did you have any other things that you jotted down that you wanted to discuss that we didn't cover yet?
I don't think so. I think, I think the biggest message that I'm hoping people learn is, yes, this 2020, people joke about the year 2020. In fact, this is kind of an interesting sort of side story, but Match.com, which is, the dating app, they just created a commercial on what it would be like if you dated the year 2020. And Google that sometime and watch it because it's quite entertaining. And they have, I think Taylor Swift lent one of her songs to this, and you've got this woman who's trying to date the year 2020 who is dressed like the devil and is evil and is doing all these terrible things. But the fact is, yes, 2020 is a year I think everybody's going to remember for lots of different reasons, and probably some of those are not great. But that being said, there's opportunity, and I think where we go from here is exciting. I think where we go from here is exciting from a business perspective, from a marketing perspective. I think everyone's probably taken a lot of time to personally look at relationships in their life and what really matters in life. And I think it's a pivoting sort of turning point for everybody in regards to everything in their life. And yes, it's hard now, but brighter times are ahead. So I think that's kind of my message that I wanted to wrap up with.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining today. I was especially excited to have you on because I think digital marketing and just content creation is so critical during this time. And I wanted to make sure that Female Fridays is putting out hard-hitting and very beneficial content just for anyone in our industry to sit in, learn about, maybe think about things a different way, and to use some of these practices to improve, upon their own performance in businesses. So thank you so much for joining us.
And well, thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing these shows. I mean, I think it's fantastic, and I look forward to coming back. So it was an honor to be on here. So thank you, Crystal.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Bye, guys.